All right. Good afternoon and welcome into the Morning Burrito Podcast Live.
Someday it won't be morning.
Well, someday we'll actually, like today, show up for our podcast.
Yes,
unlike
exactly.
the last 2 weeks.
Exactly.
One of our listeners actually held us accountable for that last night.
What, they whined?
Yeah, Ben was like, "Hey,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
you guys,
Yeah.
where have you guys been?"
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry, Ben.
I'm all caught up and I'm waiting for a new episode.
This is to you today, Ben. This podcast dedicated to Ben.
It actually is, and in fact,
It is actually, because the topic's even
the
Ben.
topic is from Ben, and we've been asking
Yeah.
for months now for you guys to give us a topic to talk
Well,
about.
Yes, but that was like to be typed in during the podcast
Sure.
while we're watching. But
But at least it's here.
it is here.
Like he is.
he is sitting around the fireplace at my house last night.
It was
He's like,
awesome.
"Hey, why don't we talk about?" And we're like, "Yeah, whatever." Wait a minute, that's actually a good idea.
Yeah. So today's episode is called "Listen to the Music," and one of the questions that we get as pastors fairly often, it's probably more than me than you, I would assume, just because I'm a youth pastor. But can I listen to Christian? Do I have to listen to Christian music? Can I listen to secular music? Secular is the word for non-Christian, I guess. Can I listen to not Christian music? Is that okay? And so we thought, because Ben suggested it, that's a good topic. Well, we have never discussed that before, I don't think, in any real way.
Well, we also said that we would call Ben and get him on
you,
here.
You said that. I didn't say that.
I did say that. But Ben works for,
one of the train companies.
So he's a little busy.
He drives the trains.
He's a little busy.
And just as an announcement, next week we have a very special episode. It is our 100.
Number 100.
Yes,
Maybe we can have a burrito.
triple digits. Like, how cool is that?
Wow.
We've made it to triple digits.
Well, we should have been there already, but
That's true. A long time ago, actually.
Yeah, sorry.
But before our 100th episode, we are really excited to have a special guest with us, and that is going to be Jim Ramos from Men in the Arena, an organization dedicated to helping men be their best selves, Christian selves. And so he'll be with us, and we'll be just discussing a fun topic surrounding men. So be looking forward to that next week. That's going to be a good one.
Next week?
Yeah, next week.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know it was next week?
I didn't know it was next week.
It's the 100th episode. You got to have a special guest for the 100th episode.
Okay. All right. I wasn't quite tuned into that being it's like next week's episode. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All
right. Well, we're gonna get into this topic today. Listen to the music. We will be right back. All right. I had to explain something to him in that break.
I need more coffee.
We have to record the interview of our guest next week, but we will show the show will air on Wednesday next week. So
we really could eat a burrito next week during the podcast.
we could, because we could record it in the morning.
Right. And then
it'll probably be recorded on Tuesday next week.
And then we'll
like,
eat it while we watch.
It'll actually be the morning burrito for us.
We can actually watch our own show. That's good. Okay.
Well, we
Works.
can comment on it too, which is easy. And by the way, if you are live with us on our app here, go ahead and chat with us. We would love to chat with you. I'm gonna actually get signed in as we speak. Better turn my volume down so we don't hear that double. Okay. So to get started into this listen to the music topic, one of the things that you wanted to do, and I think it's a great idea, is talk about kind of our growing up time. What were we listening to, and how has that changed over our lives as Christians and as pastors? So go ahead, tell me some of the bands that you listened to as a youngster.
Well, as a youngster, I probably don't have a name of any band as a youngster. I
say youngster, I mean like teenager.
Oh, okay. All right. Because my home growing up was all my dad in his 50s and 60s music. And that was it.
So La Bamba?
I mean, you name it, it was there. It was on 8-track tapes. Remember those? And then
8 tracks.
I mean, we had 8-track tape in the car, and then we had the cassette tapes, and they had multiple cassette tapes where it was just awesome.
Your daughter is actually commenting. I wonder if she actually knows. Gabe, you need to put this in the chat. Do you know what an 8-track tape actually is? That's what I want to know.
I don't know if she's ever seen one. I don't know if we've ever had one in the house. But so anyway,
or Betamax.
I grew up. I grew up in the 50s and 60s era, even though I was born in 8, and
You're 10 years younger than my parents.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I'm
You're like old enough to be an uncle.
I'm just that guy. I'm gonna be a grandpa in June.
Scary thought, isn't it?
And then but as a teenage years, I was into more like the AC/DC, the Guns N' Roses, the Bon Jovis, the Metallicas, the Scorpions, the White Snakes. You know, it's kind of that. Ozzy Osbourne.
It's White Snake.
I know, but they're all snakes at the day. So, you had to be part of that.
Poison.
So you can't even talk because you weren't even there. So
Poison.
You don't even know.
I do know 80s
know.
music. Look, I literally have. What does that say?
I don't know. I can't have my glasses on.
It says anything 80s.
Anything 80s.
Anything 80s.
Anything 80s.
The Bengals. Did you listen to the Bengals?
No, that was a football team.
Wow.
Aerosmith. Which is kind of cool because Slash. Well, I need more coffee. Seriously,
you do.
You messed with my coffee this morning.
Oh, whatever.
It's that caramel flavor you dumped in there that's still there. Yeah. Did I listen to who?
Gabrielle says, I don't even know these bands you're talking about. And she said she's never seen an 8-track.
Good for her. Good for her. It's my kid. Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent was big. Thunder Thighs. Great song.
Cat Scratch Fever.
Yeah, that I remember. Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up, all those bands, great. I like anything 80s. I still to this day love 80s music. Although it's amazing when you listen to songs now, how convicted I get, and we'll get into this later. But you hear some of the songs, and then you realize what the context of these songs are, and you're like, "Oh man, I used to sing these like they were great." And I feel uncomfortable singing this stuff now. But I listened to my dad grew me up on, and I let you hear some of this in our pre-show. Jethro Tull.
Never heard it, but I heard it in pre-show. I'm like, seriously, what was wrong?
It's awesome.
What's wrong?
Jethro Tull, fantastic artist.
If you want a good laugh, listen to it.
Whatever. I listened to Rush.
Limbaugh?
No,
the band. I wasn't a Rush guy.
My grandpa was a Rush guy. Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Dream Theater. Ever heard of Dream Theater?
Nope.
Okay, Dream Theater, progressive metal band. All of the guys in this metal band graduated from Berklee School of Music. So they're all like classically trained professional musicians. And they made just wonderfully beautiful rock and roll.
They didn't make it to Michigan.
Yeah, whatever. Led Zeppelin. Did you get Did you ever get the Let Out?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Whole Lot of Love.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm horrible on song names, but yeah, probably.
So that's kind of...
ZZ Top was a good one.
ZZ Top, yeah, sure.
That was good. I wanted the hair.
I wanted the beard.
I could never get the hair, but...
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of rock and roll back in those days. So when you started to get more serious as a young guy about Jesus, how did that change? Like, what were some of the bands you were listening to when you gave your life to Jesus? What was some of your old school Christian stuff that you were really into? You told me some of them.
So that's a different question, though. So growing up, I was more of the Bill Gaither Home and a bunch of quartets.
Again, we're talking about high school. We're not talking.
This was high school. I wasn't saved until my sophomore year. So Gaither Vocal Band, all of those guys.
You can tell how old he is.
That's
He's totally dating himself now.
That's where we grew up. But then when I was a Christian, that's all I knew, and I just knew that, like Bill Gaither, who I think is still alive.
Yes, he is.
So he's still alive. He's in our hymnal. I think he's the only alive person in our hymnal, but
probably so.
Which I don't know what a hymnal is anymore. But
is there a purpose for a hymnal anymore?
That's a different show. We should ask Jim that next week. So, all I knew was the Gaither type stuff, and I was like in the middle of whatever Van Halen was doing at that time. I love
Van Halen.
So my dad, I didn't know he had this in him, but he researched it somehow, and Petra was my first group that he introduced me to. And let's see, Petra and Metallica, not even quite on the same level, but it was enough to, I don't know, get my interest.
You want to hear something interesting? So the band Kiss, did you listen to Kiss at all? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the band Kiss, in 1992, they released a song called God Made Rock and Roll, or God, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That song was actually not written by Kiss. Do you know what band actually wrote it? Petra.
Because they sing it. God gave rock and roll to you. Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. 1977, Petra actually released that song. How cool!
I never knew the correlation there, really.
How cool is that Petra releases a song in 1977, and if you go listen to the recording, it's the exact same song. Like, there's really no difference to it whatsoever. And then Kiss, one of the most well-known rock bands probably to ever exist.
I don't know if I ever knew that.
They did that same song. They covered a Christian band's song.
Well, see, so I guess my dad was wise then, because that was the first group
cool.
he turned me on to, and then it went to.
Have you ever heard of the newer Petra stuff, Jekyll and Hyde?
I don't know.
They had an album come out when I was in college called Jekyll and Hyde. It was actually pretty good. Anyway, sorry.
Then they went kind of like, I don't know. I think like mainstream kind of went with the whole, long hair, makeup, really tight, leathers and shiny pants and those kind of things. So the Christian side of that was Stryper.
Yeah,
I don't know if you know the group.
The hair metal,
with Oz Fox, the drummer, and all that, and so we started that. That was big, and then there was the three megas. That wasn't a Trump saying at all back then, but it was who was it? It was Audio A, Audio Adrenaline, Newsboys, and DC Talk.
Yep.
So wherever they went, it was like those three together.
Sure.
So that, and then Red, and then Fireflight. Those were kind of
more recent,
the top ones that kind of came into my world. No, Fireflight's actually older than you think they are.
Not really. They're younger than I am. They've only been around since like I was in college.
So you're trying to tell me I didn't listen to them when I was in college?
Guaranteed, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fireflight did not exist back then.
Anyway, that's my.
Neither did Red.
Red
did not exist when you were in college.
Red was in the 80s. Yes, they were.
You're thinking of a different band then.
Nope.
I'm thinking.
All right, you talk. I'm going to Google it.
Okay. The band Red, who exists today, that puts out albums today, was not alive then. Well, they may have been alive, but they were not putting out music then. So for me, when I came to know Jesus, we were joking about this. There was I don't even know who put it out. Probably one of the Christian recording labels or whatever. But they put out these albums called the Wow albums.
Okay, you're right. 2002. I'm wrong.
Well, check out Fireflight and see when they came out.
I can be wrong once a day, so I'm good.
And these Wow albums, they came out for, I don't know, the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, the old Wow.
Probably was like 2000. It was probably 99 to like 2008, 2006, somewhere in there. And I had every one of them too. The purple one is the one I remember the most. The year 2000.
It was the best gift a youth pastor could give to any student.
It gave him a whole wide range of different
types
of Christian music.
Yeah.
So I got my Wow 2000 album when I was in high school as a sophomore, and I started listening to bands like Jars of Clay. Really like Jars of Clay. Song Flood, really good one. Delirious, Newsboys, DC Talk, of course. Third Day, little Mac Powell action, singer like nobody else. And nobody sings quite like Mac Powell. Of course, Audio Adrenaline. Another band, OC Supertones.
Oh, yeah, the OC. Yeah.
The old ska music. And add Five Iron Frenzy to that list. I loved me some Five Iron Frenzy. Switchfoot, Stephen Curtis Chapman, Casting Crowns.
Did you say 1,000 Foot Crutch?
Switchfoot, but 1,000 Foot Crutch would be another one. Chris Rice.
Sandy Patty?
No.
Amy Grant?
No.
What is wrong with you?
I'm younger than you.
I know.
POD, Payable on Death.
Oh, yeah.
They were big. They are big, but I love POD. A band that doesn't exist anymore that I absolutely loved, and I literally saw them multiple times when I was a high school student, the band Down Here. They were from Wesleyan Bible College up in Canada somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it was.
Hey.
But these guys were just the greatest Christian rock band I'd ever met. They probably weren't, and that's probably why they didn't survive. But I still to this day listen to Down Here music because it was so good. And then Starfield, Sanctus Real, and nowadays I listen to pretty much all worship music. I don't listen to a lot of other music, to be quite honest.
So we gave you a really good list.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of Christian bands.
Yeah, and
so here's the thing: when you were a teenager, when you were a teenager, the amount of Christian music that was out there, groups, bands, artists, whatever, was very limited, and they didn't really cross necessarily the whole spectrum of the different genres of music. That's why, a band like Petra or a band like Stryper were such a big hits, because there wasn't anything else. They were it. They were all you could get. Mm-hmm. If you wanted hair metal as a Christian that was going to give you positive music, you had to go to Stryper, because there wasn't anything else to go to back then. These days, I will say Christian music has come a really long way over the years. Christian music literally has every genre that you could think of covered. If there's a band, a secular, non-Christian band, whatever you want to call it, that you like to listen to, take Mumford & Sons as a great example. There are Christian versions of Mumford & Sons. They don't replicate the music, but that style of music, you can find that in Wren Collective or Need to Breathe. I mean, they're in that same genre of music. So
they used to give us a list, a genre list, with the secular bands on them.
Oh yeah,
and then next to them, we used to have these Christian bookstores, like brick and mortar type buildings.
Yep.
And in the back, they'd have their whole album wall, right? Back
and they're very expensive
with vinyls,
CDs,
right? No, this is before CDs. This is the actual vinyl. Okay.
Oh.
And then those walls disappeared, and then the CDs came out. In there, and then you could take it over and you could listen to it, see if you liked it. Yep. But on that wall was always the comparison chart, and it was sad because here you have a whole list of secular groups, and then next to that was the Christian version, and a lot of them were just blank lines. It's like, oh,
there's nothing to really compare to.
Yeah,
but that's not the case anymore. I mean, honestly,
no.
The Christian music has come a long way.
The church realized that the devil really isn't in a drum set.
So we're gonna actually let's go into it.
Oh, sorry, was that a topic?
That's so. Some of the questions that I came up with that I think that I know I've been asked as a youth pastor over the years. So here's one: does the music we listen to matter? That's a question I get asked a lot. Another question is: do Christians have to listen to Christian music? Another question is there anything bad about listening to secular or non-Christian music? And then I've gotten the question, how do I guard my heart if I'm listening to non-Christian music? So we're going to kind of go through some of these questions, but you brought it up there. So jump into it. Tell us, what is the purpose of music from a biblical perspective? Why does music even exist?
Well, we've kind of got the monopoly on it. I mean, music was created in the heavens to worship Christ. So that's what music's for. That's what it's there for. Short answer.
If you go into the Psalms, here's a few examples. Psalm 4, verse 1. It's always the first verse. But 6:1, 54:1, 55:1, 61:1, 67:1, and I can't read my own writing, 76:1, just as a few examples. It very clearly says that the purpose of music is to praise the Almighty.
Yeah.
To praise God. And so does that mean every song that you listen to, every band you listen to has to be a worship band singing a worship song?
Well, I think that's a whole different. I think you're going too broad with it. I don't think that's even the same question. So I think the music. For your first question, the whole music is there's nothing else really that gives us the path into a divine act of worship. I mean, that's what music was for, right? There's something there, and bringing up the Psalms, the Psalms is like this. Way for the knowledge that you have of the Bible to be your expression of worship. And if we don't have the knowledge of the Bible and we don't understand it, then we can't honestly sing the worship from our hearts. So we lose track of that. And I don't know, maybe we'll get into that maybe a little bit deeper. But so does it matter? It does matter because we're created to worship. And worship was created to worship Christ. What was your second question?
Well, so we see in the Psalms, as we just talked about, that music was created to worship God. That is the actual purpose of music. So therefore, do Christians have to not just listen to Christian music? Do they have to listen to only worship music? What's the short answer?
Carefully choose.
So I guess as a worship pastor,
you said short. That's as short as I could make it.
I think the answer is no. And here's why. Just as a quick example, there's a worship guy named Lincoln Brewster, really great worship leader. He actually played guitar for Journey way back when. But Lincoln Brewster, great artist, great guitar player. I mean, a fantastic guitar player. But I've gone to his shows a couple of times, and one of the things that Lincoln Brewster does is he leads worship, but then he has this moment during every show that I've been to where he literally will just play his guitar, and before he does it, he says, "This is my time to worship God through my music." And he literally just spends time playing his guitar and worshiping God with his guitar gift that God has given him. So it's not about music is about the heart. It's not about the actual action of playing the lyrics, so to speak, or singing the lyrics or playing the notes. It's about a heart issue. So I know many people who are in or have met many people who are in the Christian music industry. And for them, even if they're singing a song that doesn't directly, we wouldn't use on like a Sunday morning as a congregational worship song, to them that's worship because that's their connection to God. They connected to God through writing that song or what have you. And so that's a way they worship him, is through that, using the gift that God has given them to write music. So the answer is no, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think you, as a Christian, you only have to listen to Christian worship music or hymns or whatever, and that's all you're allowed to listen to. I would think that's an overstatement. And there are people who think that, though.
I think that's an overstatement. I think that's part of the legalism of the church, right? We've kind of gone down that road. However, probably a little pushback there would be, okay, I get it. You use the example of Lincoln, using his guitar instrumentally, great, but the part where my answer comes in was carefully choose, is you can't have lyrics that go against the theology of Christ.
Sure.
You can't do that. So even the best Christian version of a human cannot worship Christ and sing lyrics that are unworshipful to Christ.
Right.
You can't do that. So I think when you ask the question from a pastor's perspective, being on this side now of the desk, that's a little trickier, I think, to answer. Yeah, you don't have to listen to all Christian music. I mean, go have fun, right? We understand that. But if the lyrics are not appropriate, then
okay. So we're getting a little farther ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Well, you brought it up.
I'm just saying. So there's multiple divisions within Christian music itself, right? So you have the worship side of things, which breaks down into all kinds of different genres of worship music. You have the pop culture music, you have the rock and roll music, you have the like weird indie stuff that your daughter listens to, and she's probably going to laugh and comment now on the chat. But there's all these divisions of music within Christian music itself. Mm-hmm. I was just saying that there are people in the church who will say that you're only supposed to listen to worship music.
Yeah.
That even the other Christian music is evil. I had somebody when I was a teenager tell me that Southern gospel is the only type of music you're supposed to listen to, that anything outside of Southern gospel is evil. This guy literally took the old Michael W. Smith worship album, the orange one, okay? Michael W. Smith worship album.
It's not Southern gospel.
No, he took the CD and he cracked it in half and said, "This is the devil's music." It's a worship album. Like,
he must have got tired of Friends Are Friends Forever.
Well, it wasn't on that one, but yeah. But I bring that up because there is legalism within the church, even about Christian music, which,
and I think that covers all ages. I think there for a time I would have thought it would be the senior adult era that would say that, but no, you got the ultra conservative side of even young mamas today. They're pretty legalistic in that.
Now, I will say this. In my house, there's a lot of worship music being played throughout the week. My daughter literally, I came out of my room on, I think it was like Saturday last week or Friday, and I walk out into the living room, and my older daughter, is out in the living room singing Deep Cries Out and dancing with my younger daughter. So, like, Deep Cries Out is a worship tune. And so, I mean, that's my daughter's heart, but also we just really like worship music in our home, and we like to sing worship music a lot. So, which isn't really surprising. I'm a worship pastor, so it's part of my life, part of my DNA. But let's move to the second factor that I think we need to consider when we talk about music. It's the style of music. Is there a style of music that's out of bounds? Because I think we haven't heard it here. I haven't heard it here, but we've had Seventh Day Slumber here multiple times. And Seventh Day Slumber, very heavy rock band. They use fire and pyrotechnics and stuff, and lots of lights and whatever. In some of the churches that I've served at, that would not go over well. That would be considered demonic music, even though they're singing most of what Seventh Day Slumber has done when they've come here is do worship music. So, is there a style of music that is out of bounds scripturally? Not the lyrics, taking the lyrics out, just the music itself.
No, I think in Scripture you see all kinds of musical instruments that are used, right, to worship. And I probably would go back to one of my worship bands in one of our youth groups when we're getting ready to start a Saturday night service. They're talking about what style, right? Because I think a worship service, a church, they have a style, right?
Sure.
There's a personality that comes with that, and so they were trying to figure this out. And what they did not want is they did not want it to look like a Sunday morning church service. They wanted it to be, because it was a student Saturday night service, and so they gave me a list of songs, and they said, "So, what if we want to sing this? Is this worship to you?" And I was like, probably not. No. And they took that as, well, we can't sing it. And that's not what I was saying. It's like, to me, it's not, but to you and your culture, I get it. Yeah, go for it. And that conversation changed the life of the church right there, because that went from that Saturday night, it spilled over to Sunday morning, and it gave us a whole lot more freedom once people understood that, oh, you know what, pastors are okay with the idea of it's got to worship Christ. If it's worshiping Christ, then yeah. So I think I'd still struggle with country, but that's just me.
Yeah. I don't personally think that, because God created music, and God created, he instituted the idea of music.
I didn't even get a rise out of you on the country comment.
No.
Okay.
So I don't like country. Just everybody who knows me well knows that. But I am not a hater of country. It's just I don't particularly like the music, which is a little ironic. My wife always makes fun of me. I don't like country music, but I love bluegrass. So she's like, I don't even know how you like, bluegrass is like the stepsister to country music. So, but I would say this style of music. You said it perfectly. The Bible talks about all kinds of different instruments that are used in worship in the Bible. And those instruments translate to the instruments we have today. Obviously, they're not the same. They don't look the same. But for all intents and purposes, they are the same thing. A harp is a piano.
I'm not sure they had a cowbell back then, but
I don't know.
I've got one now.
They did have the lyre, L-Y-R-E, which is a guitar.
That's true.
Essentially. So I don't think there's any basis to say that, I've heard people say, oh, that's demonic music. That heavy metal or that hard rock and roll is demonic. No, the lyrics might be, the dress and attire of the band might be, but the music itself, it may not be appealing to the ear. Definitely can understand some of that, but is it demonic? No, music in itself is not demonic. Again, it goes back to the purpose more than the style.
Yep.
And then the third factor, which I think is the most important factor that needs to be considered by any Christian, or really anybody for that matter, is the content of the lyrics that you're putting into your head. Mm-hmm. People say, well, I just listen to the music. I don't care about the lyrics. That's a lie. I'm sorry. That's just a flat out lie. Because we were talking about before, one of the songs that I used to listen to all the time, and I loved it as a kid and as a teenager and as like even a college student, was Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard. And never really thought about the lyrics of the song, never thought about what it was actually saying. And then as an adult male Christian man, I can't listen to that song anymore because of the negative connotation of the lyrics. I'm like, okay, yeah, nope, not going to listen to that anymore.
Yeah, which probably most, I don't know, probably every group I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, it probably would be true.
Yeah, I mean, the content of their lyrics oftentimes are not healthy or edifying, or they're not praiseworthy. And so the content of the lyrics, I think, is key when it comes to deciding what music you're going to listen to and what you're not going to allow in your brain. And so I came up with a few scriptures that I want to share with you guys this morning, or this afternoon, I guess, that I think are very helpful in helping you to understand and differentiate and kind of discern what should I be listening to, what shouldn't I be. And this really falls into your TV watching, your book reading. I mean, this
across the board.
This is across the board. It can help you. So the first scripture is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. On all of these, I'm going to be using the NRSV version. But it says this: "Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." We can spend an entire show going through pop culture music right now, and the content that is not praiseworthy, that is not excellent, that is not commendable, that is not pleasing, that is not pure in any way or honorable. We could do that, and if you have questions about whether a song or a band is good for you to be listening to, you can reach out to us. I'll give you my honest opinion. But here's the thing. I think God has given all of us the ability to discern whether something is that or not. I think you can listen or read a set of lyrics and be like, yeah, okay, no, that's a no on this one. And so that's to say, I think you said it at the beginning very, very correctly. You have to take it on a case-by-case basis. We would not say that all non-Christian music is bad, but we would also say you need to be very careful to measure it against this.
Yeah, because even in Disney tunes, I mean, a lot of that's not appropriate. I mean, a lot of those lyrics, even in Disney songs, are not.
Like, what's the base message that they're getting across?
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the song? It may not be that the language is bad,
right?
But what's the message?
The message. So,
what are you teaching your kids?
So there's a couple things on this. You've heard, like, take the K-Love challenge kind of thing, where it's 30 days of listen to Christian radio.
Yeah, I remember they used to do that during pledge drives.
So yeah, and I think most every Christian radio station does some version of that.
Sure.
And I used to laugh it off, but if you take that as a challenge, make it your own challenge to just go and just spend, here's X amount of days, I'm going to listen to nothing except Christian, Christ-centered music, and then stick to it. I think you're going to find out you're going to probably struggle with it. And then secondly, you're going to end up going like, that wasn't so bad. And I think then you're going to actually end and go like, okay, I need a mixture, right? I gotta have both. But what I've seen happen in especially men's lives is men, because they drive a lot, they don't spend a lot of time reading the Bible. They don't spend a lot of time in prayer, but they do spend a lot of time listening to things as they drive. If they'll take that challenge, all right, if you'll take that challenge and just do it, let's just say 15 days, just go 15 days. Pick your favorite Christian music, Spotify it. Pick your genre. Pick
Spotify and
pick that. That's
Pandora,
changed the whole thing.
It's great.
It's changed the whole thing to Christian radio. And try that and just use that as kind of your test to see, okay, how am I guarding my heart with what I'm putting in?
And I would also add that, this isn't a music thing, but even if you bring up men driving in their cars or women driving in their cars, some of you might be like me. I don't listen to music a lot in my car. Oftentimes I'm listening to podcasts.
Well, our town's only a mile and a half long. You can't listen to anything in our town.
That's when you go to Tri-Cities.
Okay.
But the same principle, the same scripture should be applied to any podcast you're listening to. What you're putting in your mind. So this goes to Colossians, the second verse that I had.
Well, hang on, I got one more thing. So hang on to that. if you got a kid, you got a teenager, or you got a spouse that you're just like really like the lyrics to their songs.
Yeah.
Try not to just go and just bash that, but find an alternative. That's what my dad did.
Yep.
You know, my dad never came to me and said,
This is a great story,
said,
actually.
bad, right? He went and said, listen to this. And I'm like, seriously, this Christian music, you know? And he never pushed it. And I listened and then I didn't. And then it's like, okay. And I found myself standing in my living room when nobody's home, and I am like air guitaring and I am like air singing, you know, everything to Petra. And it was something that my dad did, which I don't even think my dad was smart enough at that point to know what he was doing, you know, to make this a transition in my spiritual life. But as a youth pastor, I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on these worship CDs. Interlink is youth leaders only. You get a whole box of every genre of music.
CD after CD.
Oh, man, it was great. And we would put them, you know, put stickers on them, and we'd pass them out to kids. They'd check them out of the library system, and then that didn't work. So then we just I bought multiple boxes, and we just gave them out. It's like, I don't even want it back. Just take it, you know. And the idea wasn't that kid's going to listen to that CD like all the time, or it was even become their own, but it was instilling in them there's an alternative out there that actually is better than what the world has. So I want to encourage you today. For me today, that's the biggest thing out of this whole topic is don't bash it, fix it. Find something that you can offer as an alternative to somebody to listen to, whether it's music or if it's movies. I mean, we do that for addiction all the time. I mean, people that struggle with addiction, I mean, they go and they do more than just say, hi, my name is. They go and they're told, change. Do this instead, right?
I have a similar story. A youth pastor gave me a CD by a band called Among Thorns. Worship band. Didn't even know what worship music was. But he gave me this CD, and I will never forget. I learned how to play guitar because of that album. I tried to learn the chords for that album, and that's what got me into playing worship music. That's what helped me to fall in love with the style of worship music. And then Hillsong came along, and you know, so on and so forth. But it's amazing what music does for most people. I'm sure there are people that don't connect with music at all, but I think for most people, music is a unique form of art that connects with pretty much everybody. And so that's a great idea.
All right, sorry, I throw that out there.
So Colossians 3 verses 2 and 5 says this: set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. Put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly: fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. Basically, what this scripture is saying is that our life, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows, pick the thing, books, what we're putting into our minds need to set our minds upward, not to the earth, to temporal things. And, you know, that includes our podcasts that we listen to or watch. You know, like all of that stuff matters that's going into our head. The first question I asked is, does the music we listen to matter? Yes, absolutely. What you're listening to, what you are putting in your brain matters. And here's the reason why. This is our last scripture for today. And this comes from 2 Corinthians 10:5. We are to take every thought captive to obey Christ. We can't do that if we're filling our brains with junk and garbage that doesn't belong there.
Here's a great example for me in that is there's some secular music that I cannot listen to, just like there's some foods that I just by choice tend to avoid because of past habits growing up. And what that does for me is I can hear a song and I go right back to that party in my mind, right? I go right back to that person I was dating. I go back to that group of people I hung out with. I go back even sometimes. I mean, I'm sorry, when you're just driving down the road and you're in the radio scanning, you know, and one of those great rock tunes come on, it's like I even can assume the position in my car.
Well, every time
it's like, no, that is so bad. That is so bad.
If I hear the song "I Swear," for the like R&B song from the 90s, if I hear that song, I immediately think of my 8th grade graduation dance. I put myself doing this. dancing with my hands on the side.
So it does captivate your mind, and so we gotta protect that. So some of that stuff I just cannot listen to anymore because I don't want to go back to live and remember any of those moments. So yeah, you gotta be careful.
And I would encourage you. We have a lot of parents and older folks. We don't have a whole lot of teenagers who watch this, but parents, grandparents, can I encourage you? What your son or daughter, granddaughter, grandson are putting in their minds really does matter. And you as a parent have not just the right, you have the obligation as a parent. That is your responsibility to protect and help guard your kids' hearts. And as a youth pastor, it used to be that youth pastor would be like, don't listen to this, don't listen to that, tisk, tisk, tisk. I don't think a lot of youth pastors do that anymore because it's a losing battle. But I can tell you that, like in our youth group here at Hermnaz, there's music that I will not play, even if the lyrics aren't bad. It's the message of the song that matters to me, and I'm not going to play it. You need to be careful about what you're allowing your students and your children particularly to put into their minds, because it will corrupt them. It will change their mind. It will make them think of things that they wouldn't be thinking of otherwise.
We spent a lot of money in youth group as a whole on church bus and church van stereo systems, because while they're in the youth group, our big thing was, it's not the music that you're listening to is bad, but here's the alternative. And as a group, this is what we listen to. And our rule is there was nothing played that wasn't Christian. And in order to do that, we needed to have the right sound. We needed to have radios that worked, or in our day, CD players that worked, and then, cassette players, and then the auxiliary plugs. Everything had to have an auxiliary plug, in it and stuff. So we did that. And then we went to the monster cables, like $85 a cable kind of thing. That break your church budget on that. But it was for the investment, right? And one of the hardest things as a youth pastor was, we're making this huge investment in this area of ministry because we're about offering the alternative to let Jesus work in somebody's life. And the conversations I'd have with students that were like, even visiting youth group, are like, really, we have to listen to this Jesus music? Yep, you do. Yep, you do. And then they go home, even to church families, and church families don't have the same level of, expectation, follow through, training for their kid, accountability. So it was like, we spent all this money on this, and then mom and dad don't really care. So I want to challenge you. I know it's not maybe politically correct, and you might feel like you're being invasive on your kids' time, but I challenge it. Just pick any 3 songs on their phones, listen to it.
Yep.
And then try to worship with it.
Yeah, and with Spotify, if your kids are using Spotify particularly, because that's what I use at my house and on my phone. Number one, you can block explicit music, so that's your first step. Your kid should not have any explicit music on their phone. Period. End of story. Like I don't think that's even a question. Yeah. But then once you do that, you can then look and see what's the recent stuff they've been listening to,
right? And
just like you said, sit and listen to 3 of the songs and figure out, okay, is this appropriate music? It's, again, not about style. There are lots. If your kids into rap, there are lots of great rap artists who sing godly, uplifting, encouraging, edifying music. It may not be my taste, but it's there. If your kid likes dance music, there's dance music that is made by Christians for Christians that is, again, uplifting, encouraging. So give them the alternative. Find out what they like and give them something instead. Yes, it takes more work, but again, that's our job. It's our responsibility as parents.
In 2 Samuel, I was reading this the other day in devotions, and I picked it out again for this topic. But 2 Samuel 6, verse 14, is talking about David and how David went before the Lord. But David, in this passage, it just says, David was dancing before the Lord, and I love this, with all his might. It's like mosh pit scenario there in 2 Samuel, with all his might. And it's talking about worship. He's dancing before the Lord in worship. Now, in a different passage, it says he danced naked too.
We wouldn't encourage that.
But yeah, we're not. That's a different podcast. But in this passage, he's danced with all his might. And now I look back, this conversation since last night, talking to Ben around the fire pit, I've been thinking of past ministries, even in students, to go, man, that's really what I want people to do. I want them to dance before the Lord with all their might. And the only way to do that is to get the Lord in your heart, because you can't dance for something you don't have and you don't believe. So that's my challenge to you today on this podcast. If you don't have the Lord, it's kind of hard to get the knowledge of the Lord. And if you don't have the knowledge of the Lord, what is there to celebrate? So,
well, and I was just going to add, you brought something to my mind. We've talked about what you should do with your kids, but here's the thing. Integrity means what you're doing is what you do when you're not being seen. But there is also something to integrity of, parents are always guilty. I am of do what I say, not as I do, right? I mean, we all do that as parents. At some point or another, you're going to do it. But here's the thing. If you're going to challenge your kid to not listen to filthy music, you need to do that. Don't have it on in your car. I literally watched a video the other day of this mom who was telling her daughter not to listen, that she was only supposed to listen to Christian music or something. It was just ironic that I saw this video on Facebook.
Yeah.
But the next scene is her in the car, and she's singing like some like filthy song, and I was like, And the point of the video was,
true.
she was saying filthy words, but I mean, the point of the video was, parents, do what you say. Live your life, live action. Your faith is supposed to lead to action. So do it. Just do it. Do it yourself, and then you can ask your kids to do it, because otherwise they're just going to think you're a hypocrite. And why should you do it why should I do it if you don't?
And an easy safety net for that scenario is just do it with them.
Yeah.
Take the 15-day challenge. Do it with them.
Yep.
So that's all I got.
Well, hey, thanks for tuning in today. We will see you next week when we have our guest host or guest in on the show, Jim Ramos. Really excited about that, and it's 100 episodes next week.
Yeah, and I think all right. So, ladies, wives, girls that have boyfriends or guys that you want to date or hopefully date someday, next week's podcast is one that your guys need to watch. Because
Definitely,
it's all about men, and in a culture where masculinity is like under attack, or that the male species is known as just being too toxic. Next week.
The title is Manliness Extinct.
Oh, we've already titled it. Manly what?
Is manliness extinct?
Is it, or that is?
Is manliness extinct is the question.
I didn't hear you. Sorry. In the thing.
You're just old.
I know. Is manliness. So yeah, I mean,
it's going to be a great episode. I'm really excited to discuss this with Jim.
You know what's going to be funny is that there's going to be some wives that are going to go like, honey, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to this. So anyway, it's for women too, but get you guys involved.
Yep. See you guys next week.